Warning. The following podcast contains politics, leftist politics, the whole truth, justice, American way thing. We live in a time where one has to post this. Progress is a dirty word, such as science and reason. My superheroes would weep. This podcast contains naughty language as well. Original, downgrade, original, downgrade, original, downgrade, original, downgrade. Well, you get the point. So it's not just puddles, it's also the reflections, which I guess were too tasking. And yeah, that's the new Spider-Man game, which is kind of weird because, like, I don't know if you guys recall, but a while back there was a very, very similar style of game about a superhero who also kind of swings around a city, and it didn't have any problems with, like, you know, kind of like reflections. I don't know if you remember the last iteration of Arkham City, Arkham Knight. If you can see, like, the reflections in the puddles over here, the Batmobile looked really great. It even reflected, like, the buildings, the bad guys, the moon. So how the hell is it possible that a very, very old school, by relative, you know, console years, video game like Arkham, you know, Arkham Knight had all these reflections and rain, you know, all the time? Well, you know, Spider-Man can't handle puddles or reflections in the mirror. I don't know. Some people might say, like, well, you know, one's more open world than the other, but Arkham Knight was pretty open world. I mean, you know, you could just walk around, you know, get in your car, you know, and look for trouble. I mean, you didn't need to, like, pick a mission and be like, oh, you need to go here, you need to go here. So over here, you know, you see, like, a cop chasing a bad guy, so you pursue. I mean, this is pretty damn open world. And you can swing or drive pretty much anywhere you want. And, you know, it's not like this game suffered because the reflections were present. You know, Batman does whatever Batman, you know, wants to do. Like a Spider-Man does, right? Or is supposed to do. I mean, over here, he even smashes the light, and there is, like, no slowdown and the beat down. So, and this is running on my Xbox, which is the old Xbox, not the newest ones, like the Xbox S or Xbox One X. So, I don't know. So, how come an old game can do reflections and not lose any graphical fidelity, but Spider-Man doesn't see himself in the reflection, or has to forego puddles and wall detail and costume detail and all that stuff. It doesn't seem fair, because if I recall, the PlayStation 4 seemed to have a better graphical prowess. Some people might say, well, it has to do with like the GPU, not the CPU, but there are ways to working around all the things. And it's kind of funny. Go ahead and give a like to these people called Eastwood, and they showed you that the 4K enhancements was done for the Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. So some people are blaming the developer, and I kind of say no. What you're seeing over here, Sunset Overdrive, it's a game that basically they developed through Xbox and Microsoft, and it kind of shows you it's basically Spider-Man. You jump on cars, you swing on rails, and there's a lot of similarity to Spider-Man, and the team behind it were able to develop a graphically nice looking game without like suffering from like, hey, we need to remove the sparks on the railings, or we need to remove the shading or anything like that. So it's not like you can blame the studio making it. So because Sunset Overdrive was kind of a graphically tasking game to begin with. You had a lot of things moving up and down. At any given time you had many particulates going in any direction, and it was also open world. So I don't think you can blame Insomniac for the Spider-Man downgrade. Over here we're kind of seeing like one of the really heavily taxing graphically chase scenes. You have explosions, you have the railing effects, you have the gun effects, you have fire, you have the reflective surface of the creature, you have all the other zombies coming at you. So I don't know how removing reflections made Spider-Man better. But it's not Insomniac, and it can't be PlayStation, because they're famous for having like linear, graphically impressive games. So it must be someone else who's like kind of meddling with the games and being like, hey, it needs to be released at this time. We need to sell that Spider-Man and make that money, because Spider-Man licensing is now also tied with the Marvel and Disney Studios, because they're part of the MCU, and now they have to kind of pay up. So my theory is that because they have a lot of Avengers Easter eggs, and they want to plug in all the Disney other superheroes, they kind of had to like cut it short and just kind of rush it, which is ridiculous, because Arkham did it a few years back without like a hitch. It was graphically taxing on the consoles, and you see all these particulates and explosions, and the reflection of the Batmobile is still intact. So I don't know how Spidey not looking at himself on the reflection of the mirror is beneficial to the gameplay at all. It seems kind of a letdown, but once again, it just kind of shows you like what studio meddling does for not only movies but in video games, and I'm pretty sure they're going to give the video game better reviews despite all their graphical downgrades. Again, Sunset Overdrive by Insomniac Games was able to generate close to 1,000 zombies at one point. I know this because I was able to get an achievement from Sunset Overdrive, as you can see here. So I don't know what happened. We'll have to check it out, but I'm pretty sure that the trifecta of Disney, Sony, and PlayStation and Marvel are gonna go and make this game, a 90 rated, 9 out of 10, even though like it's gonna be like 20 something hours of gameplay with like 10 hours of cutscenes. But whatevs, we all know what's up, and check out Insomniac's other game because it's better. Alright, welcome everybody to another podcast of DC Domingo. We are at number 39, and it's mostly going to be centered around Batman as much as one can, but there are other stories that we are going to be covering. I did a last episode 2 weeks ago, and I think this format is doing pretty good. I'm also starting an Xbox One podcast, restarting it again. So, doing bi-weekly totally works, and I'm thinking of sticking to it. So that's going to be fun. So the first topic that we're going to talk about is actually Batwoman. She is coming to the CW with Supergirl, The Flash, and Arrow. I believe they're going to do a crossover. It's going to be their mid-season finale, and they're going to introduce Batwoman. Ruby Rose has been casted as Batwoman, and if you haven't checked her out or know of who she is very famous. With the TV show Orange is the New Black on Netflix. Catch it if you can. And if you don't know much about Batwoman, check out some of the graphic novels. I believe even like Rachel Maddow did an intro for one of the graphic novels. It's a pretty important character. So yeah, check it out if you want to. There was a lot of people who kind of made headlines with like, she was she left Twitter because people were giving her shit. And that is a very complex issue. One of the complaints is that she was not gay enough and not Jewish enough. And I don't know about you, but I don't think neither Jews or gays tend to be bullied. So it must be somebody else who's pressing these issues. Because if you look at Black Widow, there was no outrage because Scarlett Johansson is not Russian. So yeah, I believe that there were other people who were kind of bullying her. I recall that when James Gunn, director of Guardians of the Galaxy, made a bunch of backtracks and started deleting all his stupid jokes that were pretty offensive to people. People were blaming either the opposition of James Gunn. So James Gunn was posting negative stuff about Trump. So obviously people assumed that pro-Trumps or Nazi people were behind it all. And because James Gunn was working for Marvel, they assumed that it was the DC guys, even though it was neither who brought that onto themselves. It was James Gunn himself. So I'm very surprised that nobody in the media blamed the people opposite of Ruby Rose, the straight conservatives. It's or someone who's not Jewish, like evangelicals, or the opposite of DC would be Marvel. Nobody in the media did that, but there's few people in the media who like to pick and choose who they get angry at. And I guess everybody's scared of the Disney Brigade because they never pick on them, even if their James Gunn director is kind of a disgusting human being. But yeah, Ruby Rose is still coming as Batwoman despite all the stupid stuff on Twitter. And I look forward to it. It will be something pretty, badass, pun intended. And I think I know why they never showed Batman to begin with. I think they were saving it because a lot of the female-driven characters on Legends have been picking up steam, and with the inclusion of Supergirl into the Arrowverse, it's just even better. So it's pretty fucking awesome. Now, public shaming was not just restricted to Ruby Rose. Gustin Grant, who plays the Flash, had a small picture posted on Instagram not too long ago, and he was just testing out like filters or something for his new Flash costume, and people were like, "Oh, he's too skinny, and the thing is that we're entering into the early seasons of Flash, and they can't really expect Flash to be ridiculously buff, like in the comics. If you remember the 90s Flash TV show, they even had to do like a special padding to make the actor more muscular, like, the comic book Flash. So yeah, that's kind of fucked up, like, they keep picking on like DC people for some odd fucking reason. And that's never acceptable, Again, the media didn't call out the opposition, as they often do against DC, but it is kind of sad that, it takes bullies against DC people to kind of go, hey, that's not acceptable. You can love Marvel as much as you want, but don't pick on DC, And, Grant has always been a skinny guy. He's said that, ever since he was a kid that, this is his shape, and, he's not really, like, looking forward to, like, do steroids or gain a lot of muscle mass, for the character, which, in my opinion, if you look at athletes who run a lot, they tend to be really slim. So I never had any problems with the Flash being, slim. It actually fits the character. You can look at Ezra Miller. He fits the character fine. So, and they never picked him on him for being skinny. So I think it's just, right now, because DC's gaining a lot of momentum, notoriety, and popularity, they're trying to come at us any way, shape, or form. And fuck them. We're not going to let them do that. One of the coolest things that came out, also relating to Batman, was that in one of the latest issues of Batman, the media kind of ran with it, and they kind of said that Batman comes out as atheist. Tom King, who is a veteran and the writer behind the famous, Batman Catwoman wedding issue, he posted this on Twitter, regarding Batman 53. He says, a lot of people saying Batman 53, which I wrote, shows Batman as an atheist. That's not how I read that comic, which I wrote. But I don't think my reading of it is the most important one. Anyway, I hope you read the whole thing for yourself and decide for yourself. So, I think that, one of the things that writers tend to do is make things really awesome for people to interpret. How do I put this? You can have a belief on something, but not have faith in it. For instance, you can, believe that humans exist. You can definitely say, I don't have faith in humanity, I think that one of the things that makes this comic pretty damn cool is that, you're dealing with someone who is very, very human. Bruce Wayne, Batman. And there are beings who many people refer to as gods, sort of like Darkseid, for instance. He's part of the new gods, as the lore calls them. And, it's not necessarily that, he doesn't believe gods exist. It's more like, I don't think he has faith in the higher beings that he's met, whether they're good or bad. So that's my take. And that's also kind of a nice way of looking at having faith in humanity. For someone who is as dark as Batman, him saying that about, higher beings who are called gods, they're kind of basically saying that Batman sees no difference between higher beings and humans, which kind of makes him really cool and makes him view humanity in a much more optimistic sort of way in comparison to, like new gods and stuff like that. So hopefully you check out the issue. Me, I'm kind of in the same boat, whereas I'm not, I don't like to diss religion per se. I am an atheist regarding like man-made fairy tales, but that doesn't mean that I don't have faith in humanity. For instance, like if you're religious, you can choose to believe in one God. Me being a humanist and an atheist, I happen to believe in 7 billion humans, which is a little bit more than just one entity. So take that as you will. And speaking of villains, there has been another cute video game about Lego DC things, and it's the Lego Supervillains featuring Darkseid. I am not quite sure if I'm gonna play this. I mean, it's the first time that I've mentioned it because, there's a lot of kit material from DC that I don't really cover. There is a few cartoons, few books, stuff like that. This one kind of caught my attention quite simply because since I've upgraded my TV to 4K and I'm soon to get like a Xbox One X enhanced, I might be down to finally playing Lego just for the sake of it and enjoying the visuals. I know that me and the girlfriend played Lego Star Wars, and that was fucking awesome. I highly recommend that one. So if they keep the humor and they're faithful to the DC characters, I might try it out. It is pretty damn cool. They have a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of unlockables. So it might be pretty cool. If I do decide to try it out, I'll definitely have a review for it over here on this channel, and also I'll plug in my Xbox channel. That way I can do a review and kill 2 podcasts with one stone. So it seems pretty cool. So yeah, check out the presentation on GamesCom and see if you like it. So Kevin Smith hosted the DCUniverse live stream, and it was longer than I anticipated. I was expecting 30 minutes or about, because that's what the last Kevin Smith hosted DC event was. If you remember when Batman vs. Superman was coming out, they were talking about all the slate of movies they were planning on, and it was not half an hour. It was almost like 2.5. That's actually pretty damn cool. I watched it all, and I live tweeted, to my friends and stuff, and it was pretty interesting, I have to say. The app itself will be released on Batman Day, I believe September 15th. It is a weekend. I'm planning probably to get the app for my birthday, October 8th. Or maybe for Christmas, I don't know. We'll see. But the presentation was pretty cool. They released a bunch of images for Teen Titans, mostly the posters. And they focused on some of the comics. They focused on what kind of content that were going to come out. And overall, it was pretty cool, I have to say. I enjoyed it a lot. Some of the stuff they did was pretty cool, like having Jim Lee draw a sketch of Batman on the go. That was kind of nice. Let's see what else they had. They had a lot of demo presentations on how the app's gonna function. They had trivia. They had people, asking questions. And I guess the coolest thing is that they will be delving more into all the obscure characters of DC. So, for instance, if you're watching Suicide Squad, the animated movie or the live action one, and you kind of go, hey, who's Killer Croc? there'll be like a little, encyclopedia button. They'll show you more about the characters and which comics are relevant to the movie and stuff like that. Because I think a lot of people nowadays don't read. They read a lot of, fantasy stuff. They don't necessarily read newspapers to read headlines. They don't necessarily read science articles to just read I fucking love science headlines, So I think that people are getting really antsy and they don't read a lot of full substance. So it's kind of nice to have the app try to get people to be comic book literate, and kind of show them a world beyond just whatever's on the cinema, which I guess it's pretty cool. However, there was a little bit of a kind of fun that the fans had, because apparently with the live chat on YouTube, a lot of us and a lot of other fans were kind of focusing on, the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League that, we've had 3 fan-made ones already. Some of them focus on the color correcting to match Game of Thrones. Great cinematographer, Wagner. He is amazing. So, trying to match that is actually pretty difficult, but really, really rewarding. So it was kind of nice that they had the chat open, even though some people in the media try to spin it as a really negative thing. But they even, ignore the snail mail petition that was also sent out with a lot of great artwork and enthusiasm from the fans. So it was kind of interesting. The panel was very diverse. I happened to like a couple people in the panel, especially, all the people who actually like DC. There's a couple people in there you would recognize that are kind of I would say not necessarily haters per se, but they haven't really defended DC when assholes kind of come up. You don't even need to name some, but you can kind of see who it is, right? It's hey, be this person, be Superman instead of just sitting there and not doing what you're supposed to do. So I don't know. I hope that there isn't a lot of this show needs to come out daily, but they also need someone to have a presence online, especially on Twitter, because daily content is more rapid than most other kind of forms, but it only takes 20 seconds for a rumor to spread about something that could potentially cost you millions of dollars. We saw that with the entire week prior to Justice League with all the made up bullshit that people were spreading. So I think that some of these hosts need to step it up and represent DC on the Twitter and social media. How can it be that for instance, when somebody tries to troll Arby's, they have the greatest comebacks ever now. So yeah, if Arby's can do it, so can DC. So that's one of my pet peeves when it comes to new media and stuff like that. One of the things that a lot of people have said is that there was no mention of an extra trailer for Aquaman or a little snippet of Wonder Woman sequel or stuff like that. And I think that's all going to come down later on. They are doing a daily show, content and daily content. So they will need plenty of set visits. They'll have the first look at the costumes. I'm sure they're going to have first look at the Wonder Woman's villain Cheetah, for instance. I still say Pablo Pascal is playing Hades. I'm going to say it. He looks like Hades. But anyways, overall, the app looks pretty damn cool. I will be getting it. I saw Batman artist Greg Capullo. He was geeking out using, I think, the Roku. It was either Roku or Apple TV. Checking out his own artwork on his 4K TV. And I'm like, I hope they do a really good Xbox One X app, because if they're not going to do that, I was also thinking of getting an Apple TV anyways. My sister has one, and we have that in the main living room. But since I have a 4K TV in my bedroom, I'm thinking the 4K Apple TV would be perfect for, browsing comics in 4K. I don't know, seems pretty cool. Something to think about, in multiple devices. And I think originally you're going to be able to have this app on 2 devices. So, if my girlfriend wants to have it in her dorm so that her friends can check it out, I'll be down, because, I'm always trying to spread the word of DC to non-DC people so they can be like, oh yeah, this is cool. So anyways, pretty excited about the app. Some of the cast members, they need to step it up or put me in there. I'll fucking do it. Fuck, I'll do it for free. Cool. Now the main topic of the podcast is definitely Batman. And Matt Reeves, the new writer-director of the Batman solo movie or trilogy, whatever it's going to be, has been having talks with Mr. Isaacs, who you've seen on The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. But if you're a Zack Snyder fan, you'd also recognize him as a breakthrough bad guy of Sucker Punch. A lot of people are saying that just because that actor had some talks, that he might be, the new Batman, even though he is very, very short to be Batman, and Ben Affleck still signed up for it. There's a very despicable person on social media who kind of used Ben Affleck's recent, rehab admittance to kind of say that, they're done with him as Batman. But if you actually been paying attention, like, he lives for this stuff. He lives to be Batman. Even going so far as, like, making his kid believe that he is actually Batman. Whereas the FedEx guy was dressed in purple, so Affleck would be like, oh, that's the Joker, stuff like that. So he's had a lot of fun with Batman, and if you've seen his turnout in BBS and Suicide Squad, you kind of go like, fuck yeah, he is the comic book accurate Batman. In the Justice League, not so much, because a lot of his scenes got redirected and rewritten. But yeah, he's been kicking ass as Batman. So, this is kind of like, I wouldn't say like it's a sad time, but I think it's like it's a very good indication that Warner Brothers are going to go ahead and go with, Ben Affleck. Quite simply because you don't neglect an actor like Affleck, and he brings a lot of people into the movie theaters. Not to mention that playing a character who is kind of dealing, with struggles like, Bruce Wayne has, kind of gives the role a little bit more of gravitas. One idiot online said, like, well, Warner Brothers was expecting Affleck to be their Robert Downey Jr. Well, yeah, but Robert Downey Jr. doesn't play a role. He just shows up and collects paychecks. Batman, Batfleck himself actually had to, like, work out. Robert Downey Jr. showed up with, like, no sleeve shirt, and that's all the training he did. Whereas Ben Affleck was actually butt fucking naked. He had to, like, slim down, gain muscle, and keep it up. So not only just muscle wise, but also, like, there hasn't been any really meaty scenes for Robert Downey Jr. to play off. Even in Civil War, there was some of the reasoning behind it was just idiotic. And it doesn't loan you to be really gathering material. It shows that Civil War was a copycat of Batman vs Superman, because the real meat and potatoes of Batman and Superman were the individual scenes that led up to the fight. Each character had a motive, whereas in Civil War there was just we're moving on to the next scene. And that's what happens. So, in my opinion, Ben Affleck has been doing a great job. He handles the slickness of Playboy. He handles the brutality, of being like Batman. Also, some humor. Very subtle, like him handing the coffee to Alfred. It's kind of like, hey, I'm doing your job. It's kind of funny, But yeah, I do believe that Ben Affleck will definitely be Batman. I think one of the reasons why, and I'm going to kind of not speculate a lot, is that one of the reasons why he was taken to rehab by his former wife was that I think they were looking for some kind of positive headline among all the negative ones, because whenever some Batman related news comes out, they're always saying they're recasting Affleck or this and that, and I think this is one of a very, very attention gathering headline, and I also think that given that they're no longer together, and Affleck's new girlfriend tends to, want to have a drink every once in a while, and then, he goes home and no alcohol is allowed. It kind of puts Affleck in a weird situation where he wants to have some sort of balance. And, I think being cast as Batman will kind of put that balance into play. Whereas, if he wants to have a drink, he'll be like, okay, it'll be after I go to the gym. I'll do 6 hours of gym time, come back, take a shower, take a shot of whiskey, boom. It'll motivate, because you can't really tell people who have been enjoying, whether it's any kind of substance, to just cut it out completely. I think that kind of tends to backfire. And, if somebody wants to make fun of that, you should definitely vilify them online. Because some of these people pretend to be journalists when in fact they're just, social pariahs, and they don't understand the struggle. So I think that, one of the coolest things for not only Warner Brothers, but Affleck and all the Batman fans would be to have Ben Affleck sign up for a trilogy and multiple cameos. The ones that he wants to do, not the ones that the studio want him to do, like Robert Downey Jr., that doesn't really add anything to the end of The Incredible Hulk. It's just I'm just showing up here to collect the paycheck. So yeah, I think that it's a positive thing. I think that he is one of the best Batmans. Definitely puts into questioning my worship of other Batmans since I was a kid. I grew up with all of them, actually, from the 60s Batman, Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, even Clooney. And because I grew up in Mexico, Kevin Conroy was not my Batman. Sorry to burst your bubble, people, but there are more languages other than English. And I think that one of my favorite Batmans has been recently the black and white Batman from the movie serials. Just because that kind of character is very authentic to the time that Batman was created in. And some of the stunts they did was pretty crazy for low-budget black and white movie serials. Jumping from vehicle to vehicle in the open road in the middle of the daylight while wearing a Batman costume is pretty insane. So my favorite Batman has been the black and white one, and Ben Affleck. which is weird, but he does bring it back to that authentic, bruised body in a costume. Whereas I think the Dark Knight trilogy was more of a kind of like a James Bond type of Batman, which it's still pretty authentic too. But in my opinion, I like Batfleck a lot. So it is kind of cool. It is positive. I do think it's going to be, better for Henry Cavill to be the glue, because he's not the Iron Man, but the Man of Steel. Another kind of rip-off there. But I think having Superman be the one who shows up in, Shazam, because Shazam worships Superman, Also, Superman could show up in the Wonder Woman sequel, just maybe as a little glue to Justice League, and maybe even to Aquaman. I think it's going to be good. I think that since, Superman went away, and then he came back in Justice League, I think him checking up on all the heroes makes sense. Whereas Affleck being in all the DC movies kind of doesn't make sense, because he's busy with Gotham and trying to build up, the Bat family. There is the Batgirl script that is being developed. There's Birds of Prey, which might include Batgirl there. So also, we need to have Damian and probably Red Hood in the movies. So I don't know. I think Batfleck will definitely have to be focused more on, Gotham, and Matt Reeves is going to keep the movies kind of just onto themselves. They will be related to the DC universe, but they're going to be kind of like Batman comics tend to be. Batman comics tend to be more about the Bat family. So I think if you read the original substance of these movies, the comics, you understand some of the moves that DC has been making. And pretty excited. So I hope Affleck does well. I hope he recuperates. If he chooses to focus more on family instead of Batman, he will be missed, but he will be honored as well. All right, everybody. So that's our podcast. I'll be back in a couple weeks. Later.